All right, David. Well, it's great to connect. You're an OG member of Acadium. Back when we were actually Gen M and just had this crazy idea of helping small businesses while also enabling students a way they can launch their career wherever they are for free. And I mean, my first question is, what attracted you to Acadium? And maybe you could even explain your own business as well in that process.
Yes. So when I first came in touch with Acadium or Gen M back in the day, we had the digital agency. So it was a full service agency that did everything from SEO to AdWords to content creation, those sorts of things. And someone had mentioned Arcade or Gen M to me at the time. And then I just kind of started poking around the website, having a look at some of the candidates. I thought, oh, this is rather interesting. It's funny. I think the appeal initially was, hey, here's a chance to get some students for free to come and work in the business. Like that sounded like a really good hook. I think it evolved into so much more than that once I started using the platform and I understood about the long-term benefits and how you can use it as a way to find great talent that you end up ultimately employing. And I shifted away from thinking of it more than um, free labor and more about um, finding someone who genuinely wants to grow and improve, so they volunteer their time, which actually means their heart's in the right place. It's about learning and getting stronger and better in their position and a foot in the door. So that's what I started to find when I used the platform. But yeah, it started with the digital agency, and we did a few different projects, and then most recently. I happened to sell the digital agency and started up a new business called SYSTEMology, which is all about helping small businesses systemize their operations and helping business owners step out of the day to day of running their business, so they can do the classic work on it rather than in it. And I still continue to use Acadium to this day. Like when I've got little projects and things, Acadium's a key part of the strategy when I'm launching a new product or project.
It's funny you say that about the unpaid help. We found that the businesses who get the most success on Acadium are the ones who shift their mentality from, hey, I'm getting this free help to, I'm getting to meet these amazing students who are motivated to be here with me and help my business and provide mentorship back to those students. And it ends up being a great hiring pipeline in that process as well. So let's dig into, maybe a little bit as to just how you use apprentices in your business. Like, what are some of the things that they helped you with in your business?
Mm. I started using just onesies and twosies. So I'd find a student and I'd get them to come on, and I'd think, oh, well, this would be a way to kind of almost create like a positive constraint for myself to force me to, on a weekly basis, look at an area of the business that I wanted to improve. So for the digital agency, it's the classic case of, the plumber with the leaky pipes or the mechanic with the car that doesn't run very well. So one of the first students I got was someone I thought, well, how about I get someone on for digital, so for search engine optimization? I'll teach them about using SEMrush and a couple of our tools. We'll meet weekly. I'll kind of oversee the work, give them some tasks as a way to kind of just shine a light on different parts of the business that needed attention or that I thought needed attention. That's how I initially started, and that was good. I got some good results from it. But when I really started to supercharge things is when I started to think of it in terms of a project. So, we started doing things like we had a couple of virtual summits that we ran, and I had some book launches, and I started to time the recruitment of the Acadium students just before a project. So they'd get to work on a project, which felt great because they'd be involved and there'd be a very clear deliverable at the end and we were working towards something. It meant I'd end up hiring multiple Acadium students at once, usually about 3. So that I got a real benefit for, I just needed one meeting, but I could be training and mentoring 3 students at once. And then it also meant on the back end of the project, it became much easier to go, oh, wow, this student was a standout, because, you might be working with three very quickly. It's quite obvious, which ones are the standout. So yeah, it started off, like I said, the onesies and twosies. Then I kind of shifted my approach, and yeah, that's the way that I'm using Acadium now, is more when I've got projects coming up, and it works really, really well. And I'm finding it's good for the both of us. Like, I'm able to really hone my skills on management and mentorship and helping them to grow, because it's easy when you're working with a team member where you might be, if it's just an hourly transaction thing, oftentimes you don't invest as much back into them and their training, because you're kind of just getting paid. Whereas with the Acadium student, that's kind of the relationship. So it's kind of opened up my thinking again about the importance of upskilling and training team members. So I've kind of learned a bit in the process as well. And then I like to get feedback at the end with the students to go, well, what did you like? Because some of them will have worked with other mentors and done other projects. And then they help me to know, well, what made working with me so great, and what was different, and what did they enjoy about it. And they, it's things like, knowing that someone's there, having, weekly touch points, feeling like I'm working on a project that isn't just, hey, can you cut and paste these lines of code into a spreadsheet and you do that for your 20 hours per week, like something where they could really feel involved in. And again, by figuring out that, then that helps me better attract better Acadium students in for the next round. So it's kind of part of that process of improvement.
So it sounded like at first you brought on a student to get some help on SEO, and it really allowed you to, it was almost like a forcing function where it forced you to look at certain parts of your business that maybe you were just not getting the right level of attention. And through the process of working with your apprentice, you were able to improve those parts of the business, and that you realized, sounds like, that maybe there's more that could be done if you get a group of students together and you put them to, and you help organize them in a project, and same kind of time commitment. You're still spending an hour a week in the meeting with your group, but you're getting a lot more leverage. And for them, it sounds like it's a great experience. They're coming in as a cohort. They're able to get help from you, and I'm sure they're able to lean on each other as well. And I think your approach is very successful. Every mentor I've talked to on Acadium has this similar approach, and they get a tremendous amount of value with this approach. Is they don't treat their apprentices like a contractor. They treat them like a team member who's junior, and they want to help them get better. And that not only builds a better relationship, it actually also allows you to identify a great potential talent, because you're really going to get the most out of them in that process. Now, let's talk about finding apprentices for a second. What are, it can be challenging because apprenticeships only last 3 months, right? So you have to find new apprentices. What were some of the things you did to find new apprentices? What made that easy for you? What was your process like for that?
I think seeing Acadium add in the filters has really helped by thinking about some geographic regions and having them having certain skill sets. So it depends on the position that you're hiring for. I have kind of like a few-step approach. Usually the first one is we end up creating like a little questionnaire that goes for about 15, 20 questions. And we run our search filters on Acadium, and then we outreach to candidates that we think would be suitable. And we say, hey, we've got this position popping up. Here's, a little project. We think you might be good for it. Would you be interested in applying? And they'll say yes. And then we go, great, we'll start off and we'll get you to fill out this questionnaire. So it's just like a Google form, and they answer the questions. Probably takes, 15, 20 minutes, just asking them a variety of different questions around, what they're strong in, what they'd like to get better at, if they've used certain tools, those sorts of things. And I find just that alone is a great way to weed out those who won't take the time or the effort. Like if someone gets scared off by a 20-minute questionnaire, then they're probably not going to be the right fit when it comes time to actually doing the work. And then more than that, after the questionnaire comes in, we usually then, I'm trying to get, I'd say 15 to 20 people to fill out that questionnaire. Then we X out any that we think are immediately not a good fit. And then we follow up with them and say, great, you've progressed to the next level. We'd love for you to do a trial task now. Now, the trial task is only like a 10 or 15-minute task as well, but it's kind of like usually something related to what they're going to be doing. So it might be, can you create this graphic, or can you have a go at writing some copy, or, hey, I need you to write an email, just to kind of see, are they responsive? Can they follow instructions? Do they ask questions if they're not sure? Do they have good attention to detail? All those sorts of things. And then once that comes back, at each stage of this filtering process, we're kind of culling or getting closer to the students that'll be a good fit for our program. And then the last step is usually like a little jump on Zoom and have a chat. So, that might be another 15 or 20 minutes. But if you think about it, we're kind of like getting down, and then we're getting down to the top sort of 3 candidates. And then we basically say, great, we'll take all 3 of you on. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, the ultimate goal here is to try and potentially find a team member that will join us. So, I mean, I've had quite a few of these projects where I've done it, like most recently, and we'll probably talk about it in more detail, where we did one of these just recently for my book launch. And the student ended up becoming a team member. She's got part-time at the moment, 20 hours a week, and she's, potentially moving up to full-time. And it came off the back of Acadium. It was a way to, filter that process down. Then she got 3 months effectively to shine and show us that she was hungry, and, she liked working with the team, and she was a good fit. And then we could offer her a position. So that's kind of my approach. I think one last thing I'll mention is, the other big thing, and this is probably for mentees watching this, you've got to be really careful about what you write in the little bio that you write, because, I mean, unfortunately, when you're looking at lots of candidates, it is judge a book by its cover. Generally speaking, we're the one doing the outreach. I know we get quite a lot of applications the other way, like, do you have a position, and those sorts of things. But we'll do a lot of outbound stuff. And when we're clicking through, we're reading the bio really quickly. And if you're telling me, hey, I like walking my dog on Saturdays, and, I like doing, like, it's completely unrelated to whatever the task is, or your skill set, or why you're even here on Acadium, then we generally just sort of skip over. Even just attention to detail. How do your sentences look? Have you, use the right punctuation and all those sorts of things? Because that's, we're smashing through potentially, 100 candidates to try and find the 15 or so that we invite in to do the questionnaire. You want to make sure that you present well straight out of the gate.
It sounds like you have a really significant process that's very detailed to find the great fits for your business. And I imagine it took some time up front to figure this process out, to create the questionnaire. Did you already have this set up, or did you create it specifically for Acadium?
It's a slight variation on how we normally recruit in the team. So I would say it's almost like a simplified version of our normal recruitment process. I mean, normally we would run a job ad, we get people to fill out a questionnaire, we give them a trial task, they do an interview, and then we select them. And the first 3 or 4 stages as well can be done by an administrative assistant. Like, you kind of systemize this. And I think you'll probably learn pretty quickly that I'm a bit of a systems guy. Like, this is the way that I think. So we build a recruitment system. An admin person can do the first few stages, and generally I get looped in when it comes towards the end of the process for the interview.
Got it. Yeah, it sounds like it's working. It's effective. How has the quality been through this process?
Yeah, look, we remove a lot of the dead wood. very early in that process, and they almost self-select themselves out. Like I've found, they'll just stop replying if they're not the right fit. But I've had the good team members that have come all the way through comment on they enjoyed the experience because it gave them a chance to shine and gave them a chance to kind of stick out, made them realize that we're different and we're particular in getting the right team members on board. So we've had, good feedback from the students from it as well. I think creating some form of variation on this, I think, will significantly improve someone's success with Arcadium. And thinking, I mean, you've got, and I see this when people try and work with, team members in a virtual environment. If they haven't got some experience working virtually and then managing someone, they might hop on Acadium. They do a horrible job at recruiting someone. Then the assistant isn't really good. They don't show up. They're not managed very well. And then they get to the end of the process and, maybe they're 1 month in and then they just stop really supporting the Acadium student because they think they're not delivering. And then they come to the conclusion that Acadium doesn't work, when really it's not Acadium that doesn't work. It's the way that you're selecting candidates, which is the problem. And I think that's why, I mean, see that when people work, even if they're recruiting offshore, like it's not just Acadium, it's, maybe they start working with a virtual assistant and they give them a few tasks and then they think, oh, I'm spending more time teaching the assistant how to do the thing than actually getting work done. This is inefficient. This doesn't work. Hiring virtual assistants don't work, or hiring Acadium assistants don't work. And I think it's more a reflection of their approach and their system for recruitment.
So speaking of which, you mentioned that there's some businesses who just really aren't systematic in their own business and don't really approach it in the right way. What kind of businesses do you think would do really well in Acadium? Like, what's the right kind of businesses for Acadium from your
Yeah,
experience?
I think a couple of things need to exist. You'd want business owners with experience. So you don't want a brand new business owner. So I reckon to be a good mentor, you need to have some sort of experience. So I'd say at least 3 to 5 years experience in business. I think experience working virtually. So as in having team members that either work from home or work in a virtual environment, which, I mean, that's probably been accelerated for you with COVID. So I think that's probably a win there. I think having a small team, if it's just the business owner's too busy at the best of times, let alone trying to think about training up an Acadium student. That sounds, potentially like more work. So I think if there's a bit of a team around them, then they've kind of already figured out some of the problems. So I would say, at least 3 to 5 team members minimum would make sense. I think, I mean, it would work for any business, but I think service-based business, it would probably work with quite well. They're probably a few of the criteria that stick out for me at the moment. I mean, you have to think about what the students are for. And initially, when I came across, it was Gen N back in the day, it was all about marketing, and marketing was my sweet spot. And I kind of felt like, because marketing was a strength of our business, and me particularly as the business owner, when it came to our business, it fell on my shoulders. So I thought, getting an Acadium student was a way for me to try and extract some of that knowledge out of my brain and transfer it and potentially skill up another team member. So I'm just trying to think of, and now that Arcadium's expanding their reach, it's still to do with, digital marketing and stuff. So I think maybe some form of background or history with some form of marketing. I think that would also be helpful, because then it enables you to get the most out of the student, know what to look for, know how to ask the right questions, potentially have already done some of the tasks that you're looking to get the student to do, so you can give appropriate feedback. But they're probably a few things that come to mind on, what sort of businesses would be well suited to Acadium.
Super insightful, and that's pretty much in line with what we found out as well. Let's talk about mentorship for a second. There are some businesses who come to Acadium and they don't want to provide mentorship. We try to filter them out as much as possible. Now, on your end, how do you feel about the mentorship? Do you feel like it's a drag? Do you feel like you're giving more than you're receiving? How is it different in the case of an Acadium apprentice versus another person you might be working with remotely?
It's very much person dependent. And that's one of the reasons why I like to work at least with 3 students in one go, because it is a drag if for whatever reason, even through your recruitment process, if someone sneaks through that isn't the right fit, and then you're feeling like you need to meet with them every single week, you're busy enough as it is. And then it's an extra hour or half an hour that you're going to be chatting with this student who doesn't feel like they're fully committed. So whether or not, I mean, you can spot that early and call it, for what it is. I think that's why the recruitment process is so important. And I feel like it depends on who's doing the mentoring and how much they value their time. See, I value my time extremely, valuable in the business because there's a bunch of things that only I can do. So I need to make sure I'm investing that time as wisely as possible. So that's why having 3 assistants at once, like we did with the book launch just recently for SYSTEMology, was so important, because then, I felt like, well, I'm working on this project anyway. That's another actually key insight. If you're doing something anyway, and then you can bring the assistant or the Acadium student along for the journey, then it doesn't feel too off course for you. But if you're trying to get them and mentor them something which is sitting on, over to the side here, and you hadn't really prioritized it anyway, it's an extra brain leap to try and then find time to add that into the mix. So, just a couple little hacks, I suppose, for mentors is, thinking in terms of a project that you're going to be doing anyway, and potentially using a handful, because then you're more likely to get a star. Like I think about Dovi, who came through when we did the SYSTEMology book launch. She was a star, a pleasure to work with. There was 1 or 2 other assistants that weren't as strong as her, but she well and truly made up for it, because I saw the opportunity to recruit her at the end of the process. So for me, it was like an extended recruiting process for her, which I would, and I've come up now with a great team member. So that for me was a big win.
How do you feel about the value of Acadium, like the cost to value that you're getting?
Look, I think, I mean, I was in, even when I think it was a lot cheaper on a per credit basis when I first joined, and I thought that was great value. But even looking at it now, as it's grown over time, I've been happy to take the price increases, mainly for a couple of reasons. One, I've noticed that I mean, you guys need to do well to improve your service, and I'm watching the filtering grow, the candidates grow. Like as you're growing, everything's getting better. So I see that, the investment that we make to buy a credit to get an Acadium student is well and truly fair. Like, I mean, when you consider you're getting someone to come in and potentially volunteer for 10 hours per week over the course of a 3-month process, like, I mean, that's fantastic value for money. Even I don't want to say it, but even as your price continues to grow, if you do end up growing it, I think it would still represent great value. Which means right now, if you're thinking about it, it's it'd be perfect time to get started.
Amazing. I mean, yeah, I love all this insight. It's definitely the right way to use Acadium. And I've seen a lot of businesses get tremendous success in exactly the same format that you just described, where they provide the mentorship, they have a qualifying process, they have experience, they know how to work with somebody, and then this gives them that extra leverage and then potentially a hiring pipeline. Now, you mentioned projects, and what we've noticed as well is Acadium, sometimes you don't need to have an apprentice. You don't have a use for them in that moment of time. How do you deal with the fluctuating needs of your business and keeping your membership on Acadium?
I mean, you make it super easy from a one. I'm conscious that I'm probably going to have 3 students when I do start a project. So I let the credits build up. If I come to the end of a project, I don't mind if, I pick up a couple of credits and then it just sits in my account until I am ready to use it. So that's one. And then when I feel like if I'm getting too far ahead, you've got the option to pause the membership. So usually what I'll do is I'll let, the credits build up to get to my 3 because I know I'm going to use that anyway. And then sometimes I might pause it for a couple of months or something like that before kicking back into it. So I don't know if that's what you wanted to hear from a pausing membership point of view, but I mean, that just works for us.
Absolutely. I mean, we've experimented with a lot of different models, as you probably can see, to see which one works the best. And we are still experimenting actually with some models right now. And as businesses who came earlier get a better price than businesses who come later as the service expands and we put more investment into it. So now, you've mentioned, I think you've pretty much explained how to get success from Acadium.
It might be, and I don't know if now's a good time. We talked about the steps that I went through. I can give a high level, full walkthrough of my most recent example of doing it, what the result was, what we got them working on, how often we were meeting, all those sorts of things. That might also help to kind of tie together some of this thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that.
Yeah. So, late last year, I've been working on a book called SYSTEMology. It's Create Time, Reduce Errors, and Scale Profits with Proven Business Systems. It's for business owners. It's this whole idea of getting them to step out of the operations. I was fortunate to do some good work with a guy called Michael Gerber, who wrote the book, The E-Myth. And I got some mentorship underneath him. And that was interesting because I've had now... I approach the same philosophy for Acadium as I think about for myself. I sought out a mentor. I volunteered and worked for Michael for 3 months, unpaid. And that has opened up tremendous doors and opportunities for me. That's why he wrote the foreword to the book. That's why he endorses what I do. And it started off with me volunteering for a position. Then after I did that volunteer position for Michael, I was running an event, and then I had someone who watched me volunteer for Michael, then volunteer to help support my Business Systems Summit, which is an event that I ran. He's a guy based in Canada. He volunteered for 3 months, unpaid, helped me launch that project, was a huge success. He's a gentleman who was in his 60s. He's extremely knowledgeable in business, but he just loved what I did, loved my approach, loved what I did with Michael. He's now come on as a senior leadership team member, and he's on our board for SYSTEMology and System Hub. And that was just kind of showing you at all levels this approach of almost like an apprenticeship as a way to open the doors, creates opportunities that you just don't know. Like for Michael Gerber, if you think about life and business like snakes and ladders, and you're progressing along the board of snakes and ladders, and you just go from one to next, occasionally you could land on a ladder, and that ladder will zoom you up to the top of the board, and you'll go infinitely quicker. Potentially choosing the right mentors and mentees, like as a mentee, potentially working with a mentor is like landing on a ladder, and they could zoom you up 10 levels above, and it's the shortcut. You don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know if it's going to go well and which ones won't or which ones will, but you got to play the game, and you got to at least get involved because that's the only way. So anyway, I launched the book late last year. I finished writing it. And in the 3 months prior to going live on Amazon, that's when we went to Acadium. I planned out my strategy. We use Asana, and I mapped out the launch strategy, and then went to Acadium and hired 3 students. Went through my recruitment process. So started off with the outreach, then went through to questionnaire, then went through to trial task, and then finished up with interviews. I looked for a variety of different skill sets. So I wanted someone who can handle my social media. I wanted someone who had some experience with some graphics, and another guy who was experienced with some copy. So I gave them different trial tasks. Once we'd selected the 3 candidates that I like, I had actually someone on my team. They did all the initial filtering. So I gave them my email templates. They logged in as me in Acadium. They did the outreach on my behalf, and then basically moved them through this process. We loaded everything onto a Google spreadsheet. So that way, when the questionnaire came back, she was highlighting and telling me which ones she liked and which ones she didn't, as they kind of progressed through this queue. And there was a handful of email templates that she used. Once they were ready to start, we started meeting on a weekly basis, all 3 of us. So I got the time zone right. It was in the morning when all 3 of us were meeting. And I mapped out, or I showed them the strategy that I defined or outlined in Asana. I recorded every single call I had with them. I put those calls into a Dropbox folder that we shared. So that way, if, occasionally one of the Acadium students could or couldn't make it, on those calls, I would do the first probably 15 minutes. I'd give them an update. Here's where we're at with the book launch. Here's, we've done this, we've done that. This is what it's looking like. And then I would spend the last sort of, calls would go for about an hour. I'd probably spend the last, 40 minutes or thereabouts. We'd go through each assistant or each Acadium student and get them to go, well, what did you worked on for the week? And what are you going to work on for the week? And they got to, talk amongst themselves, and I encouraged them to connect outside of those weekly calls. And then I would just, I gave them each a role, so they felt like they had ownership over something. I mentioned like Dovi's, she was the social media manager. I ended up, for the book launch, I created a Facebook group that I got what we call book launch ambassadors, and they got behind the book launch, and she was the champion in there. So she's, posting social media and doing little updates and letting people know when the launch dates are happening. And she was really hands-on, very active. She was definitely the standout in the way that she participated. I had 2 other guys that were part of the program as well. They did some really great work to help support it. The book, so we basically started off with this, book launch ambassador group, and we were sending emails out to my database, and we started getting some ads that we were running just to get everybody all excited about this book launch. I had one assistant, one of the biggest things that was a big win for us. We started sending out, we made a list of influencers, and then we started sending out review copies of the book to these influencers beforehand to get them to review, to pre-write their book review. So that way, when the book launches, they'd post the review live straight onto Amazon, because that's like an important ranking factor for Amazon and books ranking. And I had an assistant manage like all of that component. So that was a huge part of success. The book launched in August last year, and it got, topped out of the charts of, all of the different categories in sort of business management, and even made its way up into the top 3 in the business category on Amazon. We have well over 150 positive reviews, like 5 and 4-star reviews on Amazon. Just in the launch, which is the first month after we launched, we sold 5,000 books, and the book continues to perform tremendously well. Acadium played such a key part, and those students, in the success of that book. There is no way that it would have been the success that it was without them, because I had 3 assistants giving 10 hours per week devoted solely to this book launch, that was then led with me leading them through the process, directing them on what to do. So it was almost effectively like having a full-time person focused on this book launch for 3 months, in addition to my time and a little bit of my team's time. And then the success at the other end, I mean, I mentioned it a few times. Dovi, she happened to be, because I'm based in Australia, she's a traveller, and she was happened to be in Australia. She was over in Perth. I'm on the East Coast. She was on the West Coast when I did the book launch. But then she's returned home with everything that's going on with COVID. So she's headed back to Eastern Europe. And we've continued to work. So I've given her, she works for me now 20 hours a week. Because we already work virtually and we've built it up, the rapport and everything, I meet with her in a similar capacity. I usually meet with her once a week on a Wednesday in an afternoon, because that's her morning, my late afternoon. That's where we get the crossover. And to this day now, she manages my social media. As we've started to bring in some new assistants, she's started now like overseeing and training up some of them. So it's a little bit of a fairy tale sort of ending there. But it's not the first time that's happened. Like, that's not the first, that's just the most recent project I've run. But I've run numerous projects through Acadium to similar effect.
We actually also hired an Acadium apprentice at 20 hours a week. He handles our content marketing. Ryan Carruthers, actually, he was an Acadium. Yeah, you know Ryan.
And I chatted with Ryan. Like, he's written content, outreach email to me was great. I hopped on and I chatted with him on Zoom. He spoke incredibly well. I think that's the other thing. Sometimes there's a misconception that, these are, students and they're not going to necessarily be skilled or up to the task or whatever, which I think is flat out wrong. I think one other thing I've found when there's a huge variety. I think early on, I even recruited some people that were just looking for like a sea change or a career change. Like, I got some people that were, had run full business careers that were back in on Acadium because they wanted to learn about digital marketing to branch into new spaces. I've had 2 assistants I can think of off the top of my head. So this misconception that, you're going to get a student who doesn't know what they're doing. I think, again, the problem isn't Acadium. The problem probably is your recruitment system, if that's what you're thinking.
Amazing. And just for those who might be listening, Michael Gerber is the author of the New York Times bestselling book, The E-Myth, and a fantastic book. And David, SYSTEMology, fantastic book. Learn how to work on your business instead of just in your business. If you're a small business owner, it is a must read. David, this has been fantastic. I appreciate your time. Lots of great insights here. I mean, we can go on for another hour if you have that kind of time. And I just want to thank you on behalf of our team at Acadium and the apprentices in our community for being a fantastic mentor and contributor to our community.
Pleasure. Thank you. And if anybody wants to find out more about what we do, it's just over at SYSTEMology.com, or even just head over to Amazon and pick up the book there.
Amazing. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So I actually have a few other questions that I want to throw on here, but one is, we're considering enabling variable length apprenticeships. I'm looking for your feedback right now, where you could do a 1-month apprenticeship, 2-month, 3-month. You can, if you have a shorter project, let's say. What's your considerations on variable length apprenticeships instead of the fixed 3 months?
Good question. It's hard to know because maybe I'm a little bit biased because I've already done quite a few of the 3-month ones. I don't necessarily think it's going to be any more attractive unless you did something like 3-month, 10 hours a week, 1 month full time.
Oh, that's a good insight. The other question I have is related to, we have something called the instant interview that we just launched, where a candidate, but you have a whole vetting process, so I don't know if it's even relevant to you, but they'll be able to book an interview into your calendar without even having a chat request. But you have a whole vetting process, so I don't think that would actually work for your type of vetting.
What would be the benefit? Who is that benefiting?
Well, we found that sometimes businesses send a lot of messages to coordinate with an apprentice to book a call and get on an interview with them.
Yeah.
But those are businesses that don't generally have a detailed vetting process. So for them, it would be easier because they can just get calls booked directly in their calendar. It's like, oh, I got to interview.
If you could turn it off and on per candidate. So maybe it's a feature where when they're ready to book, they go, you press a button in the chat widget that says, book this call. And then maybe the robot or the calendar or whatever it is pops up, and then it's up to the student to book it in. But you don't want to be booking in, have everybody booking in on your calendar, even if you don't think they're the right fit.
Oh, good insight there too. So another question is, we are looking to have just one plan. We're discussing plans right now. And the pro plan that we currently are looking at enables you 3 apprenticeships at a time and $400 a quarter. Yeah, it's $400 a quarter. And you can do 3 apprenticeships at a time. It's a subscription. What's your consideration around something like that?
I think that's going to suit to and I don't know who your target avatar is, but it would suit larger companies, because to run the apprenticeship, and it might not necessarily be the business owner who's running the apprenticeship. If you could teach department heads how to think about apprenticeship in terms of projects, and you had a big enough team where maybe you've got a marketing person who would recruit 3 in a go. I'm just trying to imagine running a project every single quarter, bringing on 3 students. Depending on the size of the team, there's going to be a little bit in overseeing and managing that. I like it, but I'm probably not the target audience to speak to it. I think for me, it would be overkill.
So you wouldn't want to be on a subscription of $400 a quarter where you can do 3 apprenticeships at a time?
At the moment, I'm probably running 2, maybe 3 projects a year that would be suited to this. So I'd go, that's probably a little bit more. I think I'm on a sweetheart deal. I think I'm probably, I don't know, $150 or something a credit. So I think that's fine for me.
Got it. What else? What do you find is the biggest reason why you don't use Acadium, or that you struggle to use it, or that you have issues using it? What's the biggest hassle you have with Acadium?
Do you know what might be interesting? If you want to have an upsell, and it'd make the whole process. I mentioned the recruitment process. I'm imagining if you had some assistants that could work almost like a concierge service for clients to do that recruitment process, or something similar to what I just talked about. So maybe if you're looking for an upsell, maybe you say, for $500, let us hop in there and do the recruitment and put forward, the best 2 or 3 candidates or something like that. I'm just thinking that might reduce the friction for some people as to why they might not be using it to get them good candidates. But that's probably someone else. Why aren't I using it more? I think the reason I'm not using it more is because I don't have anyone else on my team that need to tick all the boxes, which is they need to have a project that Acadium students would be a good fit. They'd need to be a good mentor, and then to be able to manage, I don't know, usually the bigger projects, it's me that's working on those when the one-time projects come through, because there's a lot of moving parts. And I think yeah, that I then become the bottleneck. Basically, the short answer is I'm the reason that I don't necessarily use it more. Because I don't, I might not have a project that's running, or I'm doing some other things. And I mean, it's still, it's work. You've just got limited time in the day.
Cool. And then the last question would be, we have a referral program that we're just looking at the incentives for it, and we're thinking of making it $250 to refer someone. So if you refer a member to Acadium, you get a $250 credit on your account.
Yeah.
What do you think would that be motivating? It was $50 before, where you essentially 5x it.
Yeah, look, I like, I mean, you did it as a credit. That's good. I'm wondering if you could do it something like um, money. I don't think money is the best way to market it. I reckon you'd be better off saying you'll get a credit for a student or something like that. Like I think rather than saying it's a $200 credit, you might just say, we'll add one student credit onto your account. I think that sounds better than the money, but maybe that's just me. Trying to think of what would get me to share. Like I talk about different people are motivated by different things. I talk about Acadium and have done numerous times on different podcasts and things like that, where I've just said Acadium and I've never referenced an affiliate link or something like that. It's not as much of a priority for me. Like, I'm more concerned about making a good recommendation because it's a good recommendation, not because I'm getting paid. But not everybody's like that. So I might not be the best person to ask what would motivate someone. I just talk about Acadium because it's good and I like talking. Like, I just want someone to use it and then go, oh, wow, that was a good recommendation from Dave. I should listen to Dave more often.
Amazing. Well, Dave, thank you very much for the time.